pick up your phone. Tell me where you'll be, 'cause I gotta know. Let me know when you're ready.
Hello. What up, baby girl? Welcome to Therapy Rebranded, where we're consistently inconsistent. Ding, ding, dang.
Ding, ding, we're here. I feel like we haven't been here in a while, but it's not true.
Yeah, it was just 1 week. But you literally went out of town the day after and you came back the day before.
I'm so tired of myself.
Your life is fabulous.
It's
Fabuloso.
getting there. It's getting there. Okay, go.
I mean, we're just talking to me today about how you're going back out to the West Coast to go to Napa. So
I am really excited. It's going to be like a cute little rich weekend. I'm kind of excited.
Yeah. With people who are more rich than you.
I know.
Who you were like, I have to sit out some of the things. So I can only imagine.
I can't do this. And then
the rich people were like, I got you. I got you, baby girl. I got a couple bands for you.
But I was like, I don't have that. I'm just going to sit by the pool.
Do you admit it?
Yeah.
When you don't?
To my one friend I did, yeah.
Okay.
To the one friend that's richer, yeah.
Yeah.
Just one.
Just the one, because I don't know the other bitches.
Yeah.
She was like, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. I was like, oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. Not all of us are married to NBA players. Continue.
As you should.
All right. Found this Reddit. It's called Insane Parents, and it's basically parents who, it was described as in the thing as like not crazy enough for CPS, but crazy enough to fuck you up.
So for therapy.
She goes, I synced my calendar with my mom and I forgot I have my birth control implant replaced. Date mark 3 years from now. She saw it and sent me this while I was at work. I'm 20.
Do you have a birth control implant?
Why?
It's because her name is Mom. I can't do it. You have an appointment to replace implant marked in your calendar.
Why were you looking 3 years into the future on my calendar?
We need to talk about this when you get home.
I'm going to bed when I get home, and it's none of your business what I do with my body as an adult.
I'm your mother. I don't know what. I'm your mother. Of course it is my business if you're being unsafe and not thinking about the consequences.
I feel like using birth control is the opposite of unsafe.
Literally.
LMAO.
You are not leaving the house tomorrow until we have discussed this. You cannot behave this way when you don't have a boyfriend.
Okay, hold on. Sorry. Okay, I'll just tell work I'm not coming in because my mummy grounded me for not wanting to get pregnant. I'm staying at blank tonight. Talk tomorrow. I hope it's somebody she's fucking.
Me too.
I just love this because the amount of parents that I interact with that have zero boundaries with their children, and all of the kids think that there's this imaginary line at 18 where like their parents are going to develop boundaries, and it never happens.
That's so true.
Like they're always like, yeah, I'm only going to have to deal with this until I turn 18. Yeah, okay.
Your parent, they don't just shut it off.
No.
They're in your business until you tell them not to be in your business, me to me.
If you have a parent who's not okay unless you're okay, who sees your choices as a reflection of their choices, that is not changing because of a date. I'm sorry, baby.
Because of your age.
It's not happening. They decided they weren't going to work on themselves and they just want to work on you. Good luck.
Cringes on the inside.
Another one of the insane parent ones, because there was two. They were both just like quick and easy. But if you were her, first of all, if I have a mom that intrusive, I'm moving out.
Oh, yeah.
If I have the money. I don't know if she has the money, but you have a job. So if you have the money and the resources, I'm moving out.
Also, why did she sync her calendar with her mom's?
I am curious if that was on purpose or not. Must have been. Must have been.
I feel like she would have specified if it wasn't on purpose.
It's giving, I threw her a bone and didn't realize what I was throwing.
Yes. I'm trying to be transparent. And I didn't think she would see something I'm not going to lie. I can understand that mindset.
Yes. And now you know something about your mother.
Yeah.
Would you share, do you have your location or read receipts with your mom?
No, neither.
Why? Has she ever asked?
No, never.
She's like boundary. She's like, you do your thing, I do my thing.
Yeah, exactly.
My mom has both.
I wish I could send it to my mom, but she wouldn't know what to do with herself.
But we have an agreement that she only gets to keep them if she never asks about either where I am, why I was there, or why I didn't respond to her red message.
Mm-hmm.
The red is my response. I read it. That's it. So we're good on that.
I'm using that. Not even with my mom, just in general, but I could.
The red is my response. Okay, here's the next one.
Okay.
It says, my overprotective Catholic mother just told me this lockdown is God's way of telling me I go out too much. Sorry, everybody. This entire pandemic is my fault for not staying home. My bad. And this was in March 2020.
I just want everybody to know the kids are all right if this is how they're talking about their parents on the internet.
What do you mean?
Like, I just feel like it's so like Gen Z, Gen whatever to like just talk dog shit about their parents on the
Dog
internet.
shit. I had kids tell me the other day, they were like, yeah, all of Gen Z wants to be emancipated. Word for word. And I said, bitch, millennials hated their parents first. You don't get to steal that from us.
And we actually went
Gen X hated their parents, and on and on and on.
Every generation.
We all hate our parents, but I was like, we hated our parents. You don't get to have that.
You don't get to have
and
that.
they all laughed. I didn't say bitch, obviously, but I was like, we all hated our parents. You don't get to have that.
And still do.
Like, what are you talking about? The reason why this stuck out to me because of two things. One, it was like a little timestamp into 2020 that I thought was funny.
It was.
But two, there are a fuck ton of parents who use tragedy to control and guilt their kids. It is the emotional blackmail. Like her mom said that with her whole chest, hoping that it would shame her into staying home. There's this weird dynamic with some parents where they don't care how you feel and what your well-being is as long as you're doing the thing that they think is the right thing to do. Like it's more valuable to be like the right kind of person.
What kind of parent ends up like that? Like how do you feel like
Fear-based
you can really
parents.
justify that to like that is such a dissociation from like what I even imagine like loving your child to be like.
First of all, I feel like a lot of it are not American parents, but not all of it, but a lot of it.
Yeah.
And then two, I feel like it's fear-based parenting. Like you are afraid that if you don't shame your kid, something is going to happen to them. Like you truly believe that the way you live life is the only proper way to live life. And you have to get them to do that at any cost. And I feel like a lot of different parents could be like that. I feel like if you're small-minded, I feel like if you're afraid of the world, I feel like some parents are just spiteful. But I feel like a lot of parents truly feel like, no, like this sounds wild, but like this is really what I think is best. And
it's like a mini form of like social control.
but it's not mini because it's like, it's the most important person to you. It's your parents. But it is like a form of social control. It's like, it's equivalent to like this statement of like, you know, like basically saying, which she was probably being kind of facetious, but basically saying that like God punished the world because of your behavior is just like a tactic to probably get like your daughter to not behave in a way that you think is inappropriate. It's not even about value. Like, you know what I mean?
For her to say it then means that she's probably weaponized similar things before. Like there's no way that you just pop out and just say this shit once.
Ever.
That's shame-based parenting.
100%.
Like, yeah.
And it comes from fear.
Yeah.
You're afraid.
Or narcissism too, right? Or not?
Narcissism too, but I think narcissism, there's a lot of fear in narcissism because I think narcissists can't distinguish their kids from themselves. And so they're afraid that their kids are going to do things that reflect badly on them.
I know. My mother still has to deal with comments about me.
I'm sure. The shame and embarrassment of having, I know she did. That's why I laughed. The shame and embarrassment of having a son who doesn't have a perfect past. God fucking forbid. I also have this conversation a lot with parents who are like immigrants with American born children, because there's like a lot of cultures where it's very normal to use kind of emotional blackmail and shaming to parent.
Lots of like,
and so like they grew up like that, and that's how they view that they were successful. Like my parents were hard on me, and like that's how I became successful. And like the reason why, you know, you are the way you are is because I'm not hard enough on you. So I'm gonna like do all of these things just like my parents did them in order to create success. The issue is that when you were growing up in your home country and your parent was treating you like that, it wasn't abnormal because everybody else's parents were treating them like that. They had a sense of community to be in.
There's not a mirror going up right in front of you.
It's not even a mirror. There's a sense of community, and it's the norm. Those kids aren't thinking my parents don't love me. They're just thinking this is how parents act. You come to this country and they're comparing themselves to American kids with American parents. And now they're questioning all of these different things because your values aren't the same as American parents' values. And because kids are so egocentric, they make everything about themselves.
It's like the perfect disaster.
Yes. Their assumption is the reason why you treat me differently is because of me, because you think there's something wrong with me. Because that's that's their ability to process is that. Not realizing that like I'm showing up to you and I'm giving you what I was given, and I don't know why it's not working.
Right.
I'm just trying. And then I sit these parents down and I'm like, hey, what you're doing is not working.
And they feel like failures because they're like, this has been working
They don't feel like failures. They don't believe me. They didn't grow up
Really?
here, so they don't have any proof that soft parenting or gentle parenting works. So they don't believe me.
Especially if they're older than you.
Yes.
And they're not
Right.
bought into American culture.
And that was the other thing I was going to say is that I'm telling them how to raise a kid who behaves like an American child, and they don't want an American child. They don't
Right.
want a kid who behaves that way. So why the fuck are you telling me?
Right.
I oftentimes, when I have to do education sessions with parents like that, especially if they're older than me, I make the doctor sit in session with me.
Mm-hmm.
And we go back and forth and say different things together, like tag team it.
Mm-hmm.
Because one cultural thing that I have working for me is believing in authority and believing that doctors know what they're talking about.
Medical people have a really big authority. Yep.
Yeah. So I always have to like loop that in because I'm conscious of it. But like they're looking at me like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And my kid's soft. And it's great that that soft shit worked for you, but that doesn't work on my kid. And like, here's why. And what they're missing is like, it's not that anything's wrong with you specifically. It's that the way that you're parenting doesn't reflect their community. And so they're being isolated and they're feeling less than. And they don't have anyone to turn to. Everyone they turn to is saying, you're the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Clinicians, teachers, friends, parents think you're the problem because of how firm you are and invalidating. And so it's like an interesting cycle. So that's just like, to me, it's like, I think about like my Nigerian friends reading that and like they would all laugh and not really be that upset. They'd be like, okay.
Right.
And like I think of all my American friends being like, on the inside. I mean, we're laughing at it, but we do think it's horrible.
Horrible.
And so it's just funny because a lot of people who grew up with parents like that, they do see it as a tactic. What were you going to say, Gabe?
Oh, I was just going to say, first of all, great job synchronizing your gasp there. But but I was going to ask, why do you think it's so like, okay, I was a sensitive kid. And yet, as a parent, sometimes when my son, like my daughter can make my son cry by being mean to him, right?
Yeah.
And I know I was probably the same thing, but it's like sometimes I'm like, Jesus, what a like, it, and you just can't help but like, I don't know, like, why do you think parents forget so much what it's like to be a kid?
I actually think it's the opposite. I think your son is modeling the things you hate about yourself. And that's why it's so hard to watch.
It's triggering.
You hate little you.
Yes. Oh, yeah. No, I mean, I think that's true as well. But I'm saying there is a flash.
But I also think that's fear-based of like, yes, there is disgust, but right under that, what does that, you don't want a son who is a because right under that, the meaning is like your life's going to be
Are
hard.
you saying I'm a
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, first of all, I'm not a but second of all,
no, I said you don't want a son who's a right? You're looking at behavior that you're judging.
Yes.
And yes, on the surface level, that's harsh. But one step under that is I don't want a son who's a because that makes his life hard as a man.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
For sure.
So there's concern right under it. And I think a lot of parents aren't emotionally tapped in enough to get to the concern. You don't have to worry about that because you're emotionally checked in enough to know that how you should respond.
Right.
Right. So it doesn't matter. But I think a lot of parents don't do the personal work of being like, but why am I disgusted by that?
Right.
They just go, my kid's disgusting. And that becomes the problem.
Ew, you're like that. Why are you like that?
That's an innate reaction.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Normal
it is an
reaction.
Instinct. That's why I say, like, why do we kind of forget?
But the instinct is you're doing something that's socially unacceptable that's going to make you ostracized, and I don't want that. So that's the instinct.
So I'm going to push this out of you.
So I'm going to push this out of you.
So I'm going to shame it out of you. Yeah.
I mean, shame's not the best tool, but that's what you were taught, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But your gut flag as a human who knows that the most important thing to success is being successful socially.
Yes.
Is going, you are never going to be successful socially if this is how you act.
Yes.
That's your gut going. So your instinct is irritation, but I'm saying the irritation is actually signaling to you concern.
What culture do you feel
like, is he soft?
Yes.
Yes.
I remember in grad school. Like,
and just so you know, he's not. Good.
He's not. He's
the same as me, I think. Like, I learned to be tough later.
Well, here's the thing.
But think about what that means to you.
You were emotionally sensitive in an invalidating environment. If he has a validating environment, he will work through it a lot quicker.
Yes.
He'll figure out what sets him off, and he will figure it out. When you have an invalidating environment, you're not worried about what sets you off. You're just trying not to have feelings.
Right.
You don't want that. You want a validating environment so he can figure out if he is a little sensitive.
Right.
He actually said in the car that he's kind of in a bad mood because he's tired. So Lenny, like to his sister, like, so please don't ask me questions right now because I think I'm a little angry and like irrational. And I was like, oh my God, I was so impressed. And I told him,
And so like an invalidating environment would snuff that out.
Oh yeah.
Would be like, stop asking for needs. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, you're a kid. You don't have hard days.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. 100%.
So you got to foster that. Because what can come with sensitivity is a high emotional IQ. If you allow it.
Yes. No, I am aware of that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So you might have a comic on your hands. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm a little worried about that.
It's given that.
No,
more like the apple never falls far from the tree, ever.
Were you going to say something?
I forgot.
Okay, move on to the next Reddit.
Yes.
The other thing I've been noticing, because I'm doing a shit ton of family therapy always. And like, I deal with a lot of the insane parents, like the on the border parents. And I find that those kids struggle just as much, if not more, than the like openly abused kids, because like they don't have language for what's going on. And there's not like the culture telling them like your parents are awful. Like your parents not beating you, isn't neglectful. Like you're like, maybe something's wrong with me. Like there isn't, it's kind of the same of like when you're in a romantic relationship and like he doesn't hit you, but he just like cuts you down every day, kind of. Like he doesn't call you a bitch, but like,
it's like little things.
He
It's the little things.
Talks about your body a little bit and he's never celebrates you and like he's kind of bitter when you're happy and like just like, knocking you down a peg slowly. I feel like that's what those parents do to their kids.
Yep.
Just like knock them down a peg slowly.
Well, that's how people end up with partners like that.
Instead of like just toppling it all over and everybody around you's like, oh my God, what just happened? When it's big. Everyone comes to your rescue when it's big.
Right.
When they punched you, when it's whatever. Not saying like you tell people, but once you alert the world, everybody comes to your rescue that can. Yep. And when it's something smaller, in quotes, like emotional abuse, you get kind of a mixed bag. You don't always get support.
If you can't see it, people literally don't know how to care for it.
And you also get a mix of like your parents are the worst from some people and some people like you're kind of ungrateful and it's not that bad. And you like really have to hold both and try to figure it out. It's very difficult.
What feels real? Was I wrong to call?
Yes. I'm just kidding.
Already, you're always wrong to call.
No, you're not always wrong to call.
I've been working at a daycare for a few years now. Ooh, this could go either way. The entire time I've worked there, a little girl has been attending. She's now 4. In the past few months, her personality has shifted. She's been more emotional, quick to get upset, but also been very mean to other children, both verbally and physically. I talked repeatedly with her mother about this and took steps to help her work through her big feelings. But her parents are going through a messy divorce, and I assumed she was acting out related to that. But then the behavior took a distressing turn. She would try to hold hands with the little boys and then try to get them to put their hands in her back pockets when they stood together. She started making a really big deal of being in a swimsuit and asking boys if seeing her in it made them happy. She started trying to play doctor with the other kids, trying to convince them to take off their clothes. And when I told her that sort of play was not allowed at daycare, she started trying to hide and do it. Ooh. I mentioned these behaviors to her mom and she apologized but brushed it off with, well, she's got a lot of cousins. What? But then the other day, she was playing house with another child and held up a baby doll. She pointed to the doll's mouth and told the child, kiss her here. Then ran her fingers down the doll's body and touched between its legs and said, now kiss her here. Yeah. Call. Combining this with her recent behavior shift had me very concerned, and I felt like I needed to call CPS.
I just want to say that this is a fuck ton of the kids that I work with, and there is nothing wrong with calling, and they are going to do nothing unless during the forensic interview this kid admits to being touched. They will do absolutely nothing unless this kid admits to being touched.
Yeah, exactly.
And so
I had a client where this exact thing happened.
You didn't do anything wrong because your gut is spot on, and I'm not a big CPS person, but I do think in terms of because family systems often don't interrupt it, they do need somebody else to interrupt it. And the mom's response was alarming. Like, I think mom could have been alarmed and been afraid of the system. And so that's why she played it off. And I hope that's what happened. But if that's not what happened, then she kind of is suspecting what's going on and brushing it off or willingly ignorant, which is all concerning. But no matter how this plays out in terms of you calling and who they get and what they think, if that kid is not willing to go into a forensics interview and say that happened,
they won't do anything.
They will do nothing. They can't.
Yep.
There's this really horrible thing that goes on where it's like you've been CPS. It's like, okay, like
Now what?
it's hearsay.
Yeah.
And if you haven't, which who wants a 4-year-old to be, there's no physical proof. So there's this really sick thing that happens where it's almost like you're playing this really fucked up game until something goes that far.
Mm-hmm.
You're playing like this cat and mouse game until it goes that far. I have a lot of kids who say things or are being groomed and are like telling about their grooming. Like obviously they're not calling it grooming, but they are, because they don't have that language, but they're like talking about this adult that touched them in this kind of weird way or kind of did this thing. And like, you know, like it feels off because they know a lot of times how kids know it's off is because their gut knows they can't tell their parents.
Mm-hmm.
And so if they don't have an issue with their parent and they have a gut feeling that they can't tell their parent, that usually sends an alarm bell. The kids who have issues with their parents are even more vulnerable because that's not an alarm bell. It's kind of like, of course I can't tell my parent. She's not safe. Mm-hmm. But if you have a parent, right, that you feel safe with, so that's kind of an alarm bell to kids. But even still, like they're sharing or they're not sharing. It just really depends on circumstances and how that person responds also when they're accused. And then the downside of all of this is she might just get in trouble for being hypersexual at home. Like she might just get her ass beat for behaving in ways that are inappropriate for her age, even though she's learning these things from somebody around.
Can I ask you guys this? Because this is like as a parent of a girl, like particularly, but also boy, doesn't matter. Yeah.
Boys are less, I feel like I don't have any statistical anything to back this up. I've never Googled it. I've never looked it up. But from what I know, boys take abuse longer before they tell.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, I mean, I totally believe that. And I'm a huge, like I read something once that it's also parents who teach, like, you know, there's like, I actually called one of my friends on it who, your bottom. Your bottom, your front vagina. Bottom. Right, exactly. And I was like, you can't, go ahead.
I was get what you're saying because it's like you have to say vagina. You have to do all these things. You have to
penis.
you have to create the environment where they can talk to you. If you're not comfortable, they're not going to be comfortable. That's one. 2, if you're not able to get into the logistics of the area, how are they going to know what appropriate touch is or isn't?
I just had that conversation with a friend where they run into so many children, they're a therapist, and they run into kids calling it, coochie or whatever it is.
Coochie coo.
Exactly. But like kids, what happens is they then just think that's a private part for everywhere. So if they go to the like police and say, well, his coochie touched my coochie, that's actually not, they can't actually use that because that's inadmissible because it's not specific.
Wow.
Like the kid doesn't actually, they can say, well, the kid actually doesn't know what a penis is or doesn't know what this is. So they could be making it up or it could be anybody. So like teaching your kids specific language and using specific like anatomical language is like also safety for them.
I don't know if this is more of a white thing, but like I feel like even amongst my friends who I would think are very like more progressive and would be beyond this, where they do this whole like, you don't want to name it because it's just dirty. Like, it's like it's a dirty thing.
No.
Okay, really?
It's not a white thing. I think it's like a Puritan Midwest thing. Maybe it's farther than the Midwest, but I think it's like this purity thing of like introducing anything that could be seen as sexual to children is introducing sex to them and sexualizing them. And I actually think that's an adult brain talking to kids. Just because you're talking about sex organs doesn't mean your kids are thinking about sex.
Yes.
That's an adult brain.
That's
arm. Adult thoughts.
Right.
Those are adult thoughts. It's the same like when a 6-year-old wears something that's inappropriate. Like the reason why there's often concern is because like adults I don't want her around creepy adults.
Right.
Like I don't actually think that my 6-year-old is sexualizing herself.
Right.
Like you know what I mean? Like those are
my daughter loves to wear a bikini around the house, like in a swimsuit to feel whatever she feels, right?
Yeah. Or maybe they're mimicking the women that they think are pretty, but they think they're pretty. Right. They're not trying to get. It's not the same, right?
Right.
And so, like, no, but adults put that on them.
Yes.
Like, some adults freak out and are like, why is my 6-year-old fast? Well, hold on. That's why I'm like, it's not a white thing because that's some black shit. She fast. Hold on.
And people think people think that teaching them like the actual words is going to like speed that along.
It's like how you think, it's like abstinence teaching. It's like you think the only way to not have kids not have sex is
by telling them not to?
To not teach them about their bodies. And it's like, actually, they're going to have sex regardless. Do you want them to get pregnant or not? And they're going to That's what you're teaching, though. Like, they're going to do it no matter what.
They explore more when you, like, don't actually tell them about things because they're fucking curious. If you demystify it, then there's not so much fucking curiosity. That's about anything.
Yeah.
So my understanding is, and you guys tell me if this is accurate, is that when you put that shame on it too, that's where like revel because it sort of protects them because it's a shameful thing to talk about, so the kid will stay quiet longer.
Well, it helps with the notion of like, because what grooming is trying to do is it's trying to create one is trying to make you feel safe with me, but two, it's trying to create the feeling of we're doing this together. We're both actively participating in this. So if I think this is wrong, I'm not going to my parents to tell them that somebody did something to me. In my mind, I'm going to my parents to tell them that I participated in something wrong,
right?
Which is
something dirty.
Much harder to tell.
Right.
Like,
wants to make it in the child's mind that they're equal, which is why they're like, no, I did it too. I feel bad. I feel shame for telling. Like, there's all these things that like we all hear about children or teens have. And it's like, because they feel like they have like culpability in it.
Because they'll do something like manipulate them, and then as they're in the act or before the act, to be like, your parents wouldn't like this, right? So they were like engaging in this, and it's just like this knowing and feeling around like, oh shit, well, I know what I didn't stop you, so that must mean I am okay with it.
Are there any things that you guys see that are not the typical stereotypical behaviors, or just, I don't know, whether it's a phrase or something, whatever, that
I don't see anything in adults. I think that adults know how to mask to other adults. I think that what sets kids up for failure is having a relationship with your parent where you think they wouldn't believe you. And I think what screws kids over is it's usually someone they know. And so it's like blowing something up. It's creating a problem. And so like what I would say is to just be like curious around the adults in your life who are really invested in your kids.
Yeah.
I would just be really curious about that. And like not just take that as a like, oh, thank God I have this off my plate, and really be curious around like, especially when they don't have kids themselves.
Why does this adult want to be around my kids so much?
You know what I mean?
Yes. It shouldn't be this easy to get a babysitter. Believe me, it's fucking hard. And
then the other thing is like, if your kid is saying they don't want to go to somebody's house,
immediately
believe them. If they are saying
that's great.
They don't want to go to somebody's house, believe them. They don't have to tell you anything fucked up. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because what happens a lot of time is like, especially with the co-parenting relationship, it's like, I don't want to go to mommy's house. And like, of course, mommy's not them, but mommy's boyfriend is, right? Like, believe
or
kids.
On girls' night, the friend might, the auntie who's like always watching might be molested. Like, you just
like you don't know. But when a kid is like, I don't want to be a part of this parent's life, I think a lot of the other parent feels pressured by the system because they have shared custody. So that would be something legal. It would be a pain in their ass to fight it. But I also think they want to give the other parent the benefit of the doubt. And they chalk it up to trivial things because that's easier. Like, oh, they just, like they like my house better, or my food's better. They don't like the rules over there. Or their friends are closer to me.
They miss me.
No kid gives up their relationship with their parent over something small. If they are telling you they don't want to go to the other parent's house and it's not making sense, it's because more is going on than they're telling you. And then what happens is they ask enough times to not go to the other parent's house, and the primary parent or the safe parent says no enough times that now there's no safe parent. And they're not telling anybody anything, and they're just moving between both houses and pretending.
Quietly.
Because they think that nobody gives a fuck.
Back.
Oh, God. What a nightmare. See, you guys know this shit. I think you almost can't, I don't know. That's so valuable to hear. Yeah.
Right? Because I think I think as the parent, your instinct is to back the other parent.
Or, because you think, well, she wouldn't stand for that, for them to be hurt.
And what if she doesn't know?
Right.
That's like the other thing is like you're overestimating. Like when Rachel used a female example, I think that's a great one. Like someone's like a woman doing it. Nobody's looking at a woman.
No.
All the aunties in your life that love you, or like, what if you go and stay? What if she's at her mom's house and she's like, oh, I'm going to go stay with my auntie tonight, and auntie has a boyfriend. Like, it's just like, you just never know.
Okay.
There's so many people have access to your kids. No, we're going to keep reading.
Okay, keep going.
Ask your question.
Okay, go. Assertive Rachel tonight.
I was like, no.
I like it. No.
I know, me too.
We just have other shit to talk about. She started trying to play doctor with other kids, trying to convince them to take their clothes off. And when I told her that sort of play was not allowed at daycare, she started trying to hide it. But then the other day, we read that too. Combining this with her recent behavior shift had me very concerned, and I felt like I needed to call CPS. Once I did so, the person taking my call asked if I had talked to the parents about this and asked them why it was happening. I explained that it was my understanding from my training that we should not be investigating ourselves in cases of suspected abuse.
Correct.
Yeah. She told me it was wrong of me to call and potentially ruin a family's life without doing more to make sure something was wrong. That's a lot of... But that she guessed she'd have to fill out the report anyway since I called it in. The director of the childcare is furious with me.
Why is a CPS worker pissed off that she filed a case that she knows not going to go anywhere? I feel like that's number one.
That's
number
weird.
2. Like, I also agree with the CPS workers' values of like, don't just flippantly call into CPS, but that's not your job. Your job is to take in the information.
Exactly.
There's plenty of times where I have a different opinion than what someone's sharing. That's not your job.
CPS does that a lot, though. I've heard so many people's experience of like CPS saying like, well, you shouldn't have called in for this. You don't get to say who, like, people should call in for every, actually, I think that people should call in for everything and just do hypotheticals, because you can do that. You can call in and give like an anonymous thing, whatever, and like run a scenario by, and they don't have to do shit, but they have to tell you like what you should and shouldn't do.
Mm-hmm.
But telling people like, well, you shouldn't have called in for this is like,
do your fucking job and mind your business.
do your fucking job and mind your business.
And you can't say, and like, it'd be different if you were having that conversation if you were like this radical anti-colonial, therapist who doesn't believe in this and isn't licensed because she doesn't want to be held to the standards, but you're not. You work for the fucking man and you're crying because I'm calling the man. Write the fucking report. The childcare director is furious with you because you're creating waves and it's not your problem. I feel like what I would say...
Oh, wait, it's not over yet.
Oh.
I feel sick to my stomach. It was not my intention to ruin anyone's life, and I had agonized over making the call. But I genuinely thought we were supposed to call if we had a reasonable suspicion that we weren't supposed to question parents beforehand. Did I do the wrong thing? What should I do for cases like this in the future? It's also hard because this is somebody who's like a childcare worker. It's different than other positions of
It's not like a therapist. You don't have the same power and respect in your position.
Yeah.
This is really grimy and something I would never, ever say for a therapist. This is not therapist advice. This is childcare worker specific advice. It's also not teacher advice. If you were a teacher, you should move like a therapist.
Yes.
This is like shift worker. You are seen as unimportant, but you work with this kid every day. You can make a report and not tell anybody you made it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it seems like you kind of put your job at risk. And I feel like you demonstrated that you put a lot of thought into this. This isn't some flippant decision that you made. Mm-hmm. And you could have very well went and told the mom, like, listen, I'm going to file a CPS report. But it sounds like by how your director responded that you probably would have been fired.
I agree.
You could have looped in your director prior to making the report, but it sounds like they would have counseled you on not making the report. However, you are a mandated reporter, so it's up to you at the end of the day, which is a really hard decision. You are putting yourself in a space
where you could be fired.
But also it's your choice if you want to report.
What would you do?
I
agree. It makes it hard because
I've never been in this position where I was this powerless, right? So
exactly
when I was like the grunt worker, like the nursing assistant version of a psych worker. So I would like work in a psych unit and I was the lowest on the psych unit and we would do all of the grunt work. Like I would bring up concerns that I had to the people higher than me, which was nursing, and they were often dismissed and I wouldn't take them any further. But I also was not doing daycare where I was working with people for prolonged periods of time. I was working in the hospital with people for short periods of time, being like, this is something I think is wrong or off, and sharing that. So I think that's a little different. I think if I were this daycare worker, I would have done what they did. And I'm not like casual about calling CPS.
Yeah.
I think calling CPS is a big deal. And as a therapist, I always notify people, but I'm in a position of power where I don't think I would ever lose my job for notifying people.
And the relationship, not that the relationship doesn't matter in this type of work, like but
your relationship with the kid matters.
That matters, and
more than the parents, which is different than when you're a therapist.
And in our line of work, it's kind of, we're expected to be okay with rupture.
Yeah.
Like in that line of work, like rupture is like bad for business.
Describe rupture.
Rupture would be like ruining or making a mistake or making a decision that might
piss somebody
off.
It's risking the relationship.
That would impact the therapeutic relationship. Like calling CPS usually ruptures the relationship, but for a therapist, you hopefully would have a discussion with the client around these are the instances in which I would call CPS. Hey, you're telling me a situation in which I'm wondering if I might, like, you have to kind of like be really aware of like what they're telling you so that they're, just in case they don't want to tell you that thing.
Yeah. Side note, if you are a mandated reporter, what are you forced to report to CPS, to Child Protective Services? Do you know?
I'm blanking.
Okay.
I can't remember.
You look like you were taking a test. It wasn't a test.
No, I know, but now I'm like, fuck, I should know this for this fucking test.
So, if as a mandated reporter, I have to report if somebody who is under the direct care of somebody else is being abused by them. And so that could be financial or physical.
Elder abuse.
You could call for emotional abuse, but it's hearsay. So that's a really hard one because other people would have to back you, but you could. But you're required to call if somebody hits their kid and there's a mark left. You're required to call if somebody is taking care of an elder or somebody with a disability or somebody who has a guardian. So like an adult who has like a lower functioning IQ, who has a guardian, like they could also be considered like abused. But basically it's when somebody who's in somebody else's care is being harmed. The other thing that we have to do, this isn't quite about CPS, but if I have a client who comes in and says, I'm going to murder somebody and I think that they're really going to do it, I have a duty and obligation to find the person that they said they're going to murder and warn them. I am literally supposed to try to find the specific human and warn them and then call the police. If I cannot find the specific human, then I can call the police, but you do have to prove that you tried. To find the human.
And like in any way, you're supposed to be like, hey,
anyway, Facebook, whatever, you are supposed to
give permission
immediately because there has been cases in
danger.
Yes, because there's been cases in the past where people have just notified the police, they don't get to it quick enough, and that person gets murdered. And the therapist was told, like, hey, I'm going to go murder this person. And they didn't do the right thing. So those are like all the cases.
Does your responsibility end at telling the person?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And telling the person, and I personally would notify the police.
I would anyway, yeah.
Because I think, and this isn't even about because I don't really have that strong of a belief in the police system, but it's also covering your own ass and that person's ass if they choose not to reach out. Like, let's say they choose not to do anything about it. Well, at least it's on record that this person made homicidal threats. And if they at some point decide to get a restraining order, that's on record.
Then it's there.
Then it's there and they can use that. It's not just hearsay.
Yep.
So if they ever decide, it's like, yes, for the police, you should do it for your own liability as a therapist so that there's something legal documenting that you did the right thing. But on top of that, as like a decent human, it's like, you should put this in the system in case they change their mind. It's kind of like how people, it's not the same at all because it's not happening to you, but it's kind of like how people say, like, if you are for sure you got to go get a kit, even if you don't want to press charges.
What do you do if you have a client who comes
because you know in the future at some point you might want to, and if you don't act on that thing now, you aren't going to have that tool. It's going away. What are you gonna say?
It's better to report than not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can decide what you want to do with it.
Exactly.
The issue is in some counties, if you report something, whether you want to do something about it or not, they will press charges. Often, they don't do that but they could.
You know what? I read something that counties will press more charges with assault cases than with.
Absolutely, because they're easier to follow through with. Yeah. And they're trying to interrupt domestic abuse.
Yep.
Because what happens is that
if it's on record,
there's domestic abuse. Sometimes maybe the wife's getting beat. The wife doesn't even call herself. A neighbor calls. They show up. The wife has a black eye. They bring him to jail. Traditionally, if the wife didn't press charges, he'd get to go back to the home. Now they're trying to do this thing where they are like, actually, there's an order that we said, especially if you have children, that you actually can't go back to the house for the next year. Figure it out. Get the fuck out. I don't care what your wife says. So they're trying to interrupt domestic abuse by doing like orders of protection to remove the abusive partner from the home, so it's not on the parent who is being abused to get them out of the home.
I have to make that choice.
The downside of that is that everyone in the family system, I think, feels powerless and often like they want the abuser back in the home, as toxic as that is to the outside person.
And then what happens is moms go to jail too, and then kids enter the system because mom
breaks the order of protection.
Because that's what abuse victims do.
Yeah. It's terrible.
It's terrible.
But it's good intention.
Yeah, it's well-intentioned.
It's very well-intentioned.
Because that's what it would take. It takes a system to interrupt, community violence.
And you're kind of banking on the fact that the person who's being victimized has the skill set, knowledge, and ability
to do it.
To do the, quote, right thing, which is to continue on without the abusive parent. And not everybody does. But that's what you're banking on. Because if that's the case, then they'll just shrug along begrudgingly, and their kids aren't mad at them because they didn't kick out the other partner. And they didn't remove their parent, the state did.
Right.
And now you're just kind of trying to get on with your life.
Exactly.
All right, last one.
Okay.
This is the Reddit family subreddit, and it says, my dad found out I'm not his biological son, and he's refusing to talk to me even though I did nothing wrong. I'm a 17-year-old male. That's such a rough age to have this happen. And my dad and I always had a great relationship until 6 months ago when I found out I'm not his bio son from a DNA test. I asked my mother about it, and she admitted I was the result of a long-term affair. She didn't tell me who my bio father is. I told her to tell my dad or I'd tell him. And since she refused, I ended up telling him, and he got really angry at my mother, but also kind of angry at me, and I don't know why. He and my mother have separated, which is fair. But now he won't even talk to me with zero explanations why. I thought maybe it was just shock and he needed time to adjust, but it's been so long and he still seems almost angry at me. He won't even reply to my texts. He's just blanking me completely. He's still totally normal with my brother, who is his bio son, and my brother has no idea what's going on. We sort of just let him think we had a falling out related to the separation or something. My brother goes to his new place all the time, but I haven't even been once because I haven't been invited. I don't know what to do. I miss my dad, especially because I'm only kind of talking to my mother, and I used to be super close with both of them, but especially him.
Oh, heartbreaking. My first thought, and I don't even know why this is, but my first thought is, could he have been that good of a dad to just let go? And I totally agree that it's a shock. There's some sort of grieving period. There's some sort of recognition period for the dad. Like maybe he also deserves to take space, but like, I don't know.
What comes up for me is are you as the 17-year-old regretting telling him?
Yeah.
Like, did you do the most, like, this would be the hardest thing is like, if I was the 17-year-old, is like, I chose integrity. And like that lost me my dad and my parents' marriage. Like I chose to do what I considered the right thing. I feel like that's a stain. Like that's damaging as the 17-year-old.
And both his parents are like not integrous in that like they just totally the whole thing crumbled for him. And imagine seeing your little brother get to just like live on. Oh, crumbling.
It reminds me of me. Well, it just reminds me of like I wasn't in this situation. I don't want to paint this, but I definitely like both of my father figures are way more attached to the younger sibling who's like their son. And like I think as you being the older person who's like not quite their kid or not the right whatever, like he's also like, I think dad's not realizing like I, as your 17-year-old son, I'm also having to deal with the fact that you're not my biological dad. Like that's also a huge hit to me.
Can you imagine?
No.
And mom won't tell you who it is.
Yeah. It's also a huge hit to me.
I can't imagine like he's going to have way more awakenings, I feel like, about his childhood probably because there's no way they were that great of parents and this is how that shit went.
Yeah. But I remember like with my stepdad, like we had a blowout fight and he'd been around since I was like 10. And he didn't talk to me for years. Like, we didn't talk for years. And, like, there is this, I feel like when this happens and you're not someone's biological kid, I know it's different because the dad thought this was his kid. But when this happens, it's not you're not their biological kid. It's like a reminder and something that cements in your mind and the relationship forever, in my opinion, which is, like, you're not really my dad. Like, there's something kind of missing. Like, you're not really my dad because I don't really believe if the 13-year-old did something wrong, you would ever not talk to them.
Yeah.
Right? So that creates that dynamic.
I also want to know why he took the DNA test.
But what if it was literally 23andMe?
Yeah, he could have just been doing some, like, ancestry
I feel like
shit.
it's 23andMe because when I did 23andMe, both my parents popped up. It shows your parents. Like, they're like 1, 2.
Yeah, mine popped
right
up,
there.
I guess. That's true.
Yeah. Like, he didn't even have to look. Like, he literally could have could you imagine as the mom finding out he did 23andMe? Like,
panic.
Suicide watch. And I just,
That's terrible.
I feel like at the core of this, they're both wrong. Both parents are wrong. But mom really set him up.
Oh.
Mom really set him up for an L.
Oh. Suicide
And I feel like as soon as 23andMe came out, which was like over 5 years ago, like this should have been in her mind that this was going to be a conversation and this was going to happen.
A long-term affair.
And I also can't believe he ended up having to tell. Mom didn't sack up and just be like, all right, I'm doing it.
Yo, his family was shit before this.
Yes.
Family was shit before this. Oh.
If you're him, what are you doing?
Killing myself. I'm so sorry. I'm just
get in your therapist bag. What are you doing?
If I'm the 17-year-old?
Yes.
I hope that he has the resources to be out on his own when he turns 18. and get a therapist, a really good therapist, trauma therapy. I hope that he has really good friends and leans into other friends. Like, I hope that he's able to, like, get away from them, because they just sounds like he has, like, for a 17-year-old to do that, that's a lot.
I'm telling you.
That's a lot of, he's integrous in that way. And, like, there's clearly, like, values for him that he thought they embodied in some way. Like, he's saying, I was so close with the both of them.
Definitely thought his dad did.
Right.
He definitely thought his dad embodied that and was going to
like,
respect him for doing that.
In order to maintain that and not take on, like, shame or not take on, like, he's going to take that on anyway, but he has to, like, distance for a while. And I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if I could have done that at 17. That's really hard.
Well, because I was thinking is, like,
I don't know if I can do it now.
Me at 17 would have not talked to my dad, but that would have been out of, like, pride.
Yeah.
I don't know what feels good, but I feel like at 17, when something like this happens, you just do whatever feels good.
Literally.
Whatever feels good. That's not self-destructive.
You're just maintaining.
With a caveat. That's not self-destructive. Don't go get hooked on drugs as an excuse. But I'm just saying, like.
Don't go get somebody pregnant.
Yes.
Like, don't go do that.
Yes.
Oh, what would you do?
I would go no contact probably if I was him. I would stop trying with the dad.
What kind of relationship do you want to have with the little brother?
The same.
Yeah.
The same, but I think,
agree.
you know.
Would you ever tell the little brother?
That's a really hard
That's a big
question.
One. That's a big secret to keep.
Let's see. I have a brother who's like 14 years younger than me, and we kept some pretty big secrets from him until he was about 10. And he figured it out on his own. And then when he came to me, I didn't have the stomach to lie. Like, I wasn't going to tell him. Like, I'll lie to you, like, you know, like, right. Like, I'll continue with the family narrative. But if you figure it out, like, I'm not going to let you think you're crazy.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
Like, and that caused me a lot of issues in my family system. People were really mad about that. But I feel like his sanity, as my little brother's sanity, is more important.
You did the
than
sibling
people
thing.
liking me. Like, I just am like, if he figures it out on his own, you don't lie about it. I don't think you have to introduce the idea. Yeah. And I think it's gracious of you to just say we fell out. And that's exactly what I did too.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you need to do more than that, because I feel like it's hard because you guys aren't that far apart. 4 years isn't that far, but it feels really far. It's probably the farthest it's ever felt from 13 to 17. Mm-hmm. And so, like, you don't want the 13-year-old to feel like they have to take care of you or feel differently about their dad because of how he's doing you, which could happen if you tell him how he's doing you. And
it'll come out in some other way.
I'm like, you just let it rock.
Bide your time.
Then when it comes out, you don't lie about it.
Yeah.
Actually, sometimes I'll, like, work with families where, like, the siblings are keeping secrets from each other and, like, betraying each other. And I find that, like, I'd never had any siblings close in age, so I can't, like, identify with this, but I find that it's, like, very hurtful when you have a sibling kind of close in age that is lying or keeping things from you. Like, that's your confidant kind of thing. I don't know. Gabe, were your siblings close in age?
Yeah, and, you know, because of the condition that my mother had, like, we got pitted against each other all the time. Mm-hmm. And sort of in a, like, not in a really overtly ugly way, but constant comparisons and stuff.
Yeah.
So it sort of was natural to not be super close or to not be confidant.
She split you.
Yes. I think it's weirder when I see, like, truly where they back each other.
What'd you say? Can I explain splitting?
Yeah.
Splitting is where you take control over, this is one way to describe it, but I'm describing it for family systems specifically in this way. You take control over and power over the family system by putting the people in the system against each other and towards you.
What might that look like?
Let's say you had two kids, one was 15, one was 13, and whenever the 13-year-old was fucking up, you leaned heavy on the 15-year-old and vice versa. So you're creating a dynamic where the 13 or 15-year-old only get their needs met when the other one isn't. So they have every incentive in the world to cut the other one down, to fight for your love.
They don't learn to be a team.
Right. Rather than, I think, in, like, healthy family systems, it's the parents and the siblings. I think they align separately.
The siblings are supposed to be a team with each other. They don't have to, like, get along all the time or whatever. They allowed to have siblings spat. They might even agree with the parents sometimes.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't always kind of be, like, this dynamic of where it's, like, somebody's on the outside all the time.
Like, even with my brother, we have this huge age gap. So now he's 14. So I just aged myself. But, like, you know, I find it to be different than with my brother that I shared a dad with because we were raised by the same person. Like we were in the same womb. Like we had and I don't think that necessarily matters. I think it matters how you grew up. Like the house that we were primarily in, the person who shaped our values and how we viewed the world is the same person. And there is something inherent that you share over that.
Yeah.
And so like in Gabe's house, like how much of a threat would that have been if all the kids commiserated over the way his mom acted versus fought for her love? It would have been a huge threat to her control and power.
Right.
That's what's happening now. Right. And it's a huge threat.
It's a huge threat.
So do you guys believe it's natural so in mine, it was more like comparison, like look, like your little brother's already doing this and you're not, like, it was like that kind of stuff a lot.
Yeah. It's not normal.
I was going to say, do you think people ever do it accidentally? Like, routinely.
People do it routinely all the time on accident. But if siblings don't like each other, it's often because of the parent.
And that's like chronic splitting. Like everybody might, like, you might tease like one kid. Like there's like little acts of it that like that every family might participate in. But it's like a lot of parents actively will split the kids from each other, split the kid from the other parent, even if they're married, like isolate them from friends. Like it's like putting other people down so that the other person can feel close to you. I knew somebody who they had a daughter, this is a mother, who would they would get into spats with friends like in their teen years. And like all of a sudden the mom was like, well, you don't need to be friends with them. Well, and like put down them instead of like maybe, well, what did you do? Or like talking about it in a holistic way and like just taking a side immediately. So the daughter would feel like she's the only person that she could trust. So that like it's like us against the world. You don't need to work through things with anybody. Like it's just kind of like it's like a different type
of splitting.
Yeah.
The other thing I think about like the splitting piece that would be like not a parent example, right? Would be like something I see on my job would be like maybe somebody comes and asks me for something, like a teenager, like a 15-year-old, and I say no. In order for them to get something from someone else who's maybe a little bit more insecure than me or doesn't have the status I have or doesn't have the job I have, maybe let's say they're like the runt, like kind of the MHC or the nursing assistant, they'll go to them and they will talk shit about me in hopes it will increase their chance of that person saying yes to their request.
Whoa.
So that's the splitting. They're playing on your insecurity too.
Yeah.
Of like,
I found that in day treatment.
Yeah.
Kids do that.
Yeah. Cause they're watching you interact with other people. They're figuring out who doesn't like each other.
Yep.
And
kids are smart.
And they're playing on it. So they're going to the nurse who doesn't like me and is saying, like, Gervais said I don't want this. Or Gervais said I can't have this, but it's actually because I wouldn't come to family therapy, not because I was being unsafe with it. Can I have it? And if that therapist enjoys the ego, or that nurse, enjoys the ego stroke, can't do it with a therapist because we all talk, but like that nurse enjoys the ego stroke, they might be like, that might confirm what they already think about me. And so they're going to give it to them. Well, that's my jurisdiction.
Right.
My nursing's jurisdiction, and they'll do that too. Well, no, nursing really gets to decide what we have in our room. Like I've even heard Gervais say that. So what do you think? And they might give in just because that felt good. Whereas me, like
I just get to feel that closeness just for a second.
And not even just the closeness. They're like filling that other person's like, you're better than them.
Yes.
And so like kids will try to do that to me of like, let's say I'm doing a group therapy, right? And like they'll bring up another therapist in group therapy and they'll all join in about how this therapist is uptight or whatever. That's cool and all. They're just trying to process. But what you're also trying to do
is gauge your reaction.
One, you're trying to gauge my reaction, and two, you're giving me a group social cue that you're going to like me more if I don't follow the rules, if I'm not uptight.
Yep.
And so it's like, that's where group dynamics come in. And like, if you're not experienced, you fall into that shit.
Yep.
Because it feels good.
You guys are blowing me the fuck away. I had to learn not to do that through my, like, as I grew up.
Yeah.
I did that. Like I would do that. Like, I mean, with new friends, anything, like it was sort of a natural instinctual thing that, luckily I was aware of it kind of, and you realize it doesn't work. But yeah. Okay.
It doesn't work because I feel like it's not rooted in anything stable. Like you can do it short term.
Yes.
But it burns out quickly.
Right.
It comes back to bite you.
And what happens is people who do it like chronically and long term and don't learn, we often like call those people, they have, what's it called?
Borderline personality.
Yes. I'd like lost it for a second. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's not like the core symptom, but
No.
people with borderline personality are very good at splitting because they're very perceptive of other people's emotions. And so they use that as a tool, right?
To soothe themselves.
They're very very reactive, right? And so it's like, oh, I'm reacting to you in a way that it's different and that feels good.
Do you feel like that shows up differently in adolescents than it is with adults? Because I don't really see adolescents with burgeoning personality disorder or attachment disorder stuff. I only see it like once it's there or once people are kind of in the throes of having a relationship where they've been having those behaviors.
I think when I encounter adults, they've been in treatment so long that they use like splitting to be like, you're better than all the other therapists I've worked with. Like it can be kind of abstract.
Jesus.
And I feel like
But it's a cue, kind of.
but I feel like people with adolescents, they're not that skillful, so they're comparing me to somebody else on the unit. They're comparing me to somebody I know rather than like their past experiences. Like they're buttering me up with somebody I know, which isn't helpful because I'm a seasoned therapist. So like if you, first of all, when a kid tells me a story that's negative about another adult on the unit, I am always giving benefit of the doubt to the adults on the unit.
Yep.
I'm not like talking down the kid. I'm not shitting on their experience, but in the back of my mind, my response is grounded in the adult did the right thing. And whether this kid believes it or not, they were acting in their best interest. That's where I'm coming from.
You can fact check it later.
Afterwards, I'm going and fact checking. And that's the part that's sloppy with the splitting.
Exactly.
Is like if I'm not getting off on the fact that you're stroking my ego, I'm just seeing it as a red flag and I'm going to go check. So now I have an understanding of you say one thing to me and one thing to other people. And I'm going to put that in my back pocket for when I do therapy with you. Because now I know that like
there's a tendency you might do that again. They're probably
you are doing it. You are doing it.
And you're doing it all the time.
Yes. It's not working.
Yeah.
And I want you to know it's not working. So you stop doing it with me.
I see you, motherfucker.
Yeah.
That was a fun episode.
Was it? It was hella light.
It got like, it was like groovy.
Why do you think that was light?
We're joking.
Oh, I was like, what the fuck is going on here?
Gabe doesn't understand Rachel's sarcasm, and Rachel doesn't understand
I
his.
guess not.
We can't like read each other ever.
But you ain't picking your phone up. Why you messing my head up? Any night, any day, let me take you away. All I need is just saying yeah. Better nights, better days, when you're here with me, babe. 'Cause you're all that I crave, so I wonder.
MBC. No relation to NBC.